is Cecil Hogan. I'm president of the National Burglar and Fire Alarm Association. We welcome you today. We want you to learn something and perhaps grow your business, perhaps not make a mistake that you otherwise would have made by learning from some of the people that helped build our business. They're going to tell you their stories, and we think you'll find it interesting. Thank you.
I'm Mel Mahler with ADS Security. I'm really proud to be part of the electronic security industry and privileged to be the current president of the Central Station Alarm Association. I really respect and admire the work that Charlie Darsh and Ralph Sevenor are doing to preserve the memory of our early pioneers and entrepreneurs that built this industry. Thanks for letting me be part of this program.
My name's Alan Fritz. I'm president of SIA, the Security Industry Association. Our association is very proud to be affiliated with this project where we are interviewing the builders of the alarm industry. We hope that you'll enjoy it too. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Ralph W. Sevenor. Today is August 23rd, 2006. We're here on behalf of SIA, Security Industry Association, CSAA, Central Station Alarm Association, and NBFA, National Burglar and Fire Alarm Association. This is a joint project under the auspices of ARIF, the Educational Foundation. And I'm pleased to be here with Greg Smizer, and Greg has 30-plus years of experience in the electronic security field. Started his company in Waltham, Massachusetts, and he's been active both on a local level and a state level. He's past president of MSCA, Mass Systems Contractors Association, and still currently involved in many committees right up to carbon monoxide and legislative. I'd like to actually turn this over to my partner in this project, Charlie Darsh. So Charlie, could you please...
Thanks, Ralph. Greg, I know you're still a young man. I'm rather curious as how did you get into this business? How did you get into the alarm business?
Well, it's kind of interesting. This wasn't my first choice. I actually started always thinking about photography when I was a kid. And I went to school in California, and in junior high school, I really got interested in photography. Being in LA, there's just so much art out there. And I really found that the people out there were really like pro photography. And I got to really enjoy the industry and all phases of the industry. And I said, I want to be a commercial photographer. So I moved back to Connecticut, went to high school, and decided to look for schools in Boston, and I went to school in Boston for photography. I did that for a couple of years, commercial photography, and I soon realized that the creative part of me wasn't being satisfied. It became an art director told me, okay, photograph this black thing on a blue background, or something like that. It wasn't what I expected it would be. And so at the photography studio one day, they had an awful alarm system, and the owner said, hey, do you think you could do something to me? I know you like electronics, kid. And I said, sure, let me see what I could do. So I went over to the local alarm supply place to pick out equipment. They said, oh, you can't buy equipment unless you're in the business. I said, oh, okay. So I went out, had $10 printed business cards, went back to the supply house and said, okay. And said, oh, yeah, I guess you can buy now. Because back then we didn't have any licensing. And I put the system in. I think it took me probably 3 or 4 weeks because I wasn't, obviously very savvy with wires and everything. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the aspects I liked the most was the design and the ability to how do I keep a burglar out of this building? And I think I realized right then that it combined two of my biggest things that I really enjoyed was I was always a suspicious person. I think if I did something else, I would probably have been a police officer. And combining that with the electronic side of how do I keep the burglar out of the building? So from there I started putting systems in for other photographers, other friends, and realized quickly that hey, this is a nice industry. There's a lot of people in there, but I was one of these people that was very neat and organized, and so I always had a vacuum cleaner in my truck from the very beginning. So I sold myself as someone that was very conscientious. If I walk into your home, I'll make sure that the rugs are vacuumed and everything's clean. I put down a tarp and everything, and I grew the business like that. And then the interest also was because as a kid I was a tinkerer. I loved to tinker around with radios and all different kind of electronic things. People would bring me things that were broken to try to fix. I had a little shop set up in my basement of my parents' house, and I kind of worked on things a lot. So that's kind of how I started.
That's terrific. What changes have you seen, either a positive or negative, in the 29 years? It is 29 years, right?
29 years now, plus. Well, I'll tell you, one thing I didn't like to see was many years ago when a lot of the larger dealers started giving away free systems or $99 systems. And I saw that as being a negative thing for the industry because it placed a value on security, a very low value that I thought really would affect professionalism in this industry. If the consumer felt that a system was only worth $99, you had to do a very good job of selling yourself as services. And then I realized that if I sold myself and my services and not talked about price really, but really talked about the quality and why I was doing this job, that maybe I can get some more jobs. And so I kind of had to separate myself from price. I never fell into that trap of trying to compete on price. And then from the good side of the industry that I saw changes was customer service. I mean, I just found that from the very beginning, when we had a false alarm, we would always follow up the next day with the customer and ask, what happened? Did you have a dog loose? Did you have a window open or something? And I would always be proactive versus reactive with the system, and I would always make sure that we contacted each customer, and they loved that. Wow, you called me before I called you, and I thought, that was a good thing. So it was always service-based.
Greg, a question, actually a segue to that is, how has marketing and technology changed in the industry, and where do you see it going?
Well, as far as that technology, that was, I'm a techno person. I mean, I talked about it before in other segments. I'm very much involved in technology. I love new technology. I thrive on it. I live for it. I always read the magazines and see what else is coming out that's new. But what I did notice was that back in the mid-'80s, I started using a product by Radionics. It was called a 6112, and it was the first panel that had two things I was always looking for. Partitionable panel. Somebody they have two different kinds of, there's two zones, like an office and a factory that could be armed separately, and it had the ability to be downloaded. And at that time, no one was doing downloading that I knew of, and I was able to use an old PC and download to the control panel all the information. So I was able to quickly do a bypass of a zone or a change to a type of zone or a code. And for a small company like mine, I only had 2 other people in my company, it was a very good thing to do, to be able to service something from my home at night and not have to drive out to go do that. Now, that led to other things, like that technology of that panel had an ability to have 3 separate zones off of a keypad, off that 4-wire circuit. So I immediately started taking over old systems that weren't monitored, and was able to take that 4-wire keypad and put like the front door, a motion detector, and actually create a multi-zone system off of an existing 1-zone panel. And I had a little niche there. I was doing that a lot. And that's why I think that the technology drove where my business was going at the time. And I liked, there was a panel called DART, I remember, that was out in the early 80s maybe. That was the first one to have an interior zone, which I thought was amazing. Wow, you could actually have a zone that would act 2 different ways. If you came through a door, it would be on delay. If you came through a window, it would go into alarm. I thought, wow, that was fabulous. So we started using that technology. And then as things changed, we saw the flexibility in programming, where you had the ability to program things with a PROM chip. But the unfortunate thing about that, every time you made a change, you had to burn another chip. And so always going back out to the customer's premise to do that. And that technology of being able to download made a big difference, so that helped a lot. So.
And how about on the marketing side? The changes over the years, what have you seen on that?
Well, marketing, I was never really big with marketing because I wasn't a business school person, so I think I probably didn't excel as well with the marketing side of the industry. But I did see what happened with the manufacturers is that they got very good at marketing materials to us and products to us. The trade magazines were expanding. There was lots of more magazines. We had our local trade newsletter. There was local seminars being done. So I think the sales reps got out to see you. So I think the marketing improved in that way.
Well, if that's the case, what hidden opportunities might you see out there?
Well, in our industry, I think the biggest opportunity we have to look at is to stay on top of technology, because I think in the future, the hard wires are going to go away. I think the wireless technology is getting to be spectacular. I'm still an old-fashioned hardwired person, so I still hardwire my systems when I can, but I think you're going to see the technology get so good with these lithium batteries where the systems can go 7 years without having to worry about changing them. The motion detectors, the smoke detectors being interactive maybe 2 ways in the future, where you could shut them off from a keypad even though it's wireless. So I think the installer in the future is going to have to be very astute at keeping up with technology, making sure they don't get caught behind the 8 ball and installing something only to find out that someone could buy something in a store and do it cheaper or easier by themselves without the experienced technician. So I think you have to keep reading the trade magazines, staying involved with the associations, knowing what's coming in the future so you can stay ahead of the curve. I think that's very important.
What do you see in the industry 5, 10, 20 years from now?
I think we're going to see ourselves becoming more of integrators and convergence of technologies. I'm already seeing. I have a cousin that works for Cisco, and she's over in in the Mideast putting together 100 buildings that she's wired by fiber optics and wireless technologies and all sorts of different combinations of that. And they're doing the security and everything all through the fiber optics, all with their company. So I think we have to make sure we're on top of that and that we stay with that technology, that this industry as a whole stays with that technology and keeps growing.
So you see the electronic security industry and the IT industry melding, merging?
Absolutely.
Do you see IT doing more security, or do you see security doing more IT?
I see them trying to get involved with more security, but I still think that we'll be the professionals, and I think that's the key, that we have to remain the professionals. We should be the low voltage specialists and everybody should know who we are, that we are the low voltage specialists, and we grow with that. I mean, right now in our business, we're not just doing burglar and fire alarm systems anymore. We're doing, obviously the camera systems, we're doing cameras over IP, we're doing home theater systems, because we have a lot of builders that we've nurtured over the years that they still trust us to do all the wiring. So we're doing all the integration, the data panels, the telephone, all that equipment is being put in by us. So now I'm not so worried about the monthly monitoring fee anymore. I'm making so much on the installation because we're doing all these technologies that I think that dealers need to look at that too. It's not just monitoring. And the service contracts are great, but you also have to look at why not make several $1,000s on installation and do a really good job, and they only have to have one contractor involved.
We'll have to get you to do a course on that.
Do you think in that case that we're making any progress, let's say, in the problems we're having with false alarms?
Yes, we are. Matter of fact, a lot of the newer panels follow the SIA standards now, which give you different things like the different changes on delay times, ability to do cross zoning, which I think is a great thing. So if you have, let's say you have a large area that causes a lot of false alarms, you can put two sensors together and both have their alarm go into alarm before you can get an alarm to the central station. So it gives you a little bit more stability. Also, what the biggest change I think is for false alarms has been that the industry has gone to really pretty much single point per zone. And that's made a big difference, because now you can actually pinpoint that in your first service call. You go out to the call and you can actually tell where the problem was. Now the troubleshooting, instead of figuring out which sensor caused the problem, you just have to look at that one zone and maybe look to see if it's a chewed wire from a mouse, is it a loose wire, is it the detector itself. But it gives you a better starting point, and hopefully a chance to reduce that false alarm on one call.
Now, if that's the case, what are some of the important things that are facing contractors today?
Well, we have a lot of things facing contractors today. I think the biggest thing that I hear at all the association meetings is the lack of qualified personnel. I think we're finding that, I find in my business that the calls, that the ads you put in the paper, you would generate 10 calls a day or a week maybe, you're getting maybe 1 or 2 calls, and then they're the unemployed people that are not employable. So it's changed a lot over the industry over the many years that I've been involved. And I think we have to do a better job at selling our industry to the young kids that come out of these schools, so that they would want to come into this industry and show them how exciting it is. Me, for one, every day, I love going to work. I love the technology. I love installing the systems, because every day it's different. It's not the same system day in, day out. I do so many different kinds of work. And I try to introduce that to my technicians when I hire them, the apprentices, that you have a lot of opportunity here to learn a lot of different kinds of technology. And I think introducing the home theater to it and the whole house audio systems, you give them an opportunity to try something different and not to be kind of pigeonholed and just to putting in door contacts and motion detectors.
Greg, you've got 30 years of experience. Any stories that you'd want to relay to us? I mean, you've seen a lot over the past 30 years, and I know I can think back and the number of innocent windows that I've bought, or the carpets that I've accidentally had a drill go through, or the roofs I've had repaired. Any interesting stories?
Have we all been through that?
Yes,
We've all been through that.
I only think of one that stands out, probably in maybe year 5, my installation career. I was drilling up from the basement. I thought I had measured correctly, everything like that. And I went to drill up through the floor, and my helper was there. You see the pit yet? No. You see the pit yet? And I'm drilling up. And then he goes, I hear, oh my God. And I said, oh, and I stopped the drill. I ran upstairs. Well, it was one of these carpets where I caught the carpet strand, and it was a 14-foot family room, and I ran a string right down the length of the carpet. I destroyed a brand new carpet. as it pulled one length of strand of carpet, the whole length that's built before I could stop it, before he noticed
We've all
it.
seen that one.
Yes.
We can laugh about it now, but
Yes.
boy, when it happens, it's not a good situation.
And I think that I always loved too when we did installations when the homeowners went around, because then if you made a little mistake, a lot of times it was worse once they saw you do it, because then they even eye it. But
Right.
I know that I've snuck around many times with wood putty for wood floors and patch the walls, and you find the paint in the basement, you can fix it up before they come home and get away with some things. But I definitely have to say, over the years I've learned a lot more about building construction, and I think it's really key if you have a new installer to get them out to a new construction job and let them see how buildings are built today. It doesn't help you with the old houses with the hurricane bracing, but it
Right.
can help you with new construction.
That's funny. You've had a lot of relationship with the association, and you've seen the benefits. Can you quantify what your interaction with the association has been? How has it helped Greg Smizer? How has it helped Sprint Security?
Absolutely. I have to say that when I got involved with the association, I think it was 1982, it was Dave Duvall, a still current member of our association. I met him at a NEAC convention having lunch, and we started to sit down and chatting, and he said, Greg, you really should think about joining the association. I really didn't know much about it. And I said, okay, I'll come to a meeting with you. So I was his guest at the next meeting, and I just couldn't believe all the information that was being shared at our table. We had like 8 people sitting around at dinner, and we were talking about different kinds of motion detectors and what control panel you use, and where you buy your equipment and everything. And I learned so much that night. I felt, boy, that dinner was worth hundreds of dollars based on what I learned that first night at the association. I joined up that night, wrote my check. I've been a member ever since, 20 plus years.
That's great. Anything, Charlie, that you have, or Greg?
I think that we've covered
appreciate
everything.
the opportunity to come in and share with all of us. It's an interesting story. And how old are you now?
51.
51. So you got a lot of years
Young
left.
man.
Yes.
Yes, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Charlie.
Good.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Greg Smizer from Sprint Security, a former president of the MSC, our state alarm association. And I'm fortunate enough here today to have with me 2 former presidents also, Peter Ramondi and Charlie Booth.
Hello.
Hello.
The industry, the association here in Massachusetts currently is known as the Massachusetts Systems Contractors Association, but that has not always been its name. We go back to 1972 with the formation of the group of central station companies and local alarm companies forming the Massachusetts Alarm Association, and that was in response to legislation that was up on Beacon Hill that was going to affect our industry. And at that time we were not licensed. We didn't think we needed licensing, but there were those in the electrical industry who felt as though we did need to have a license to install alarm systems. And as a result of that meeting, we formed an alarm association called the Massachusetts Alarm Association, and that association, through the courts, received an injunction against the Board of Electrical Examiners, preventing them from interfering with our installation of alarm systems. That association continued for a couple of years in meetings, and then at some point the president of that association at the time did not see fit to continue meetings, and many months went by, and at some point we formed a new association.
To get back the old one.
It's true. And actually, this is probably a good point to bring up the fact that if we didn't have that association, we probably would not be sitting here today involved in the alarm
Right,
industry.
right.
That was a very, very key thing to have the association, to have that group effort, because we're always stronger as a group than we were as individuals.
And when you have a common enemy, it brings people who are competitors together, and that common enemy was the electrical industry, who wanted us to be licensed.
Right.
So how we got from the Massachusetts Alarm Association to the present day association is that we who were members of the original Massachusetts Alarm Association got fed up with the lack of meetings taking place after the first couple of years of forming. And I believe it was Fred Tapper and Bob Klein. They got talking one day,
and decided to bring all of the members at that time together, and we formed a new association.
It was a call to arms.
Yes, and we formed this new association called the Massachusetts Security Contractors Association, and at that time the injunction was still in the name of the Massachusetts Alarm Association, and through our attorney we became party to that injunction, and it continued, and we continued to exist and held regular meetings thereafter under the name of the Massachusetts Security Contractors Association. And just briefly to bring us up to the present, there was another change in the name when National Burglar and Fire Alarm Association was going to introduce chapterization. We had to change our name to the Massachusetts Burglar and Fire Alarm Association. And then at some point in time, we went back to Massachusetts Security Contractors Association.
No, MSCA, but it was Mass Systems Contractors.
No, not
Association.
quite. No, we went back to Massachusetts Security Contractors Association, but then when the legislation had the word systems in there, that systems contractors, that it was only last year that we changed our name to Massachusetts Systems Contractors Association.
And I think that was brilliant too, that we had members of our association that helped push that cause through, because we actually were, even the leaders, we're ahead of the National Association. The National is now going through that process, and we in Massachusetts realized that we can't just be called burglar and fire alarm companies that didn't meet with what we were doing as an industry, as an association in Massachusetts. So we needed to change our name to more convey exactly what we were doing in this industry.
Yeah, in other words, there are more systems out there now than there are just simply burglar and fire alarm. Because you've got the computers,
Home automation,
audio, video,
surveillance, camera systems.
all systems. So
A lot of
the
different
idea
types of
was to
systems.
bring in these other trades.
And I think also we did a really good job at that time too, several years ago, to start really reaching out to our legislators. I can remember many years ago marching down to Washington with Charlie Darsh and several others, flying down there every 6 months with our comfortable walking shoes, walking the halls of the Russell Building in the Senate and over to see our congressmen, making sure they understood what we did in this industry. Because at the time, Congressman Markey was behind a bill to give us a 6-year protection, basically, from the bell companies, and that was very key, that we let them know who we were and what we were doing and why we needed this protection, how we needed to be able to have a little protection to allow us to stand on our own 2 feet. Well, as it turns out, that wasn't necessary. They never did come into our businesses in full flourish like we thought they would.
Yeah, in other words, they need to start buying up alarm companies, which
Right.
we were afraid of.
Or just taking our accounts, because they didn't know really what the monitoring meant without the technician on the other side telling what that signal meant. So, but
I think what
it
happened
was
is
good though.
industry, the big people, started to look in our direction and see that potentially a lot of money involved there. We can't let these little guys fool around and own it. We're gonna have to take it as much as we can. And I'm different. I wish that none of them would get in there. We built the place up, all the little guys should be running it. And all the big guys should go and do something else.
Well, also too, I think the association really grew when we started to really reach out to all these different industries. I can think of past presidents where their goal was to really double the association in membership, and right now our association is the largest it's ever been.
Wow.
And we have home theater people, we have home automation people, we have a lot of different kinds of groups, and I learn from them every day. When I go to the monthly meetings, I learn so much by sitting at different tables with different people, having dinner, breaking bread with them, and talking about, hey, how do you do this? Why do you use this? And I find that I learn more at those meetings than I do even from seminars sometimes, because you're talking to other technicians that are doing the same thing that you're doing out in the field, and they're maybe, I say, Greg, I used that product for a couple years, but then this is what happened. And they're like, oh, really? Oh, so that it would help me to learn for the future. And I know, Charlie, even you and I used to compare notes about types of control panels and things, and you and I were both computer nuts, in the 80s when you were president. We always talked about, we still talk about the kinds of hard drives and different programs that we would use to run our businesses. So I have to say that for the Alarm Association, that was probably the biggest key thing in my business life as an alarm dealer, was being a member of the association. I was so glad I joined back in '82, because it changed my life. It allowed me to really see these other companies as not competitors, but more like friends, and
Right.
actually change the way you sold systems, because you didn't want to go sell out against Charlie and say, oh, he's a bad company or something. You would say, oh yeah, that's another good company out there. So the disparaging comments weren't made anymore. It was more of like, you knew everybody in the industry, and you just sold what you were. You didn't have to knock the other company down to make
Right.
that sale. And I think that was a big move.
Yeah, I see it brought in a lot of class. People that now were willing to work together instead of against each other all the time.
Absolutely.
And by doing so, the people in the industry started to have a good feeling for what they were doing. It wasn't just throwing a wire up and going home at night. It was, you were doing something, you were providing a security for people all over the place.
More professionalism too, right?
Yeah.
The trunk slammers kind of went away in a large part, especially after the licensing came in.
Right.
In the early days, because of the distrust for your competitor, and we didn't know who he was, when you lost an account, one of the first things we would do is go in there and cut all the wires, or,
You're right.
or remove the labels, so that the next alarm company went in there would have to start from scratch. They wouldn't be able to benefit from the system intact.
You know who brought a little class to the industry too? Fred Tapper would never do that.
Yeah,
If he ever lost, and he really ever did, an account, he would give it to you just the way it was. He may take his control out, doesn't breathe out all, but everything else was intact.
Yeah.
And he'd tell you anything you wanted to know.
Now, Fred had an interesting system. His systems were all put on a big piece of plywood, as you know, Peter, and they were designed. They were basically built in his shop
Right.
before he came out to this. So he had everything all interwired on these big sheets of plywood with all the panels
Pipe.
lined up, and piped, and all
Rigid-
ready to go. So he
rigid
got out to
pipe,
the
not
job,
tubing.
yeah.
and it was half the installation was already done.
You could always tell his job when you go in all rigid everywhere.
Yeah.
Boxes and rigid and everything else. It's like the vault.
Absolutely.
He gave us a lot too. Yeah.
Peter, you were the first vice president.
Yes. Under Paul.
Paul Carroll was president. That was 1978.
Yeah.
How'd you get picked for that job?
Paul and I were the ones that used to start the go after Murray, so to speak.
Yeah.
We went to his house one time, he wouldn't let us in. And this was supposed to have a meeting. So we figured this guy's never gonna do that. He's out to hurt us, so let's get together. And we started to tell everyone. That's how it all started. To go after, to get our association back. And we did that. Took us a couple of years, but we finally finessed it. It was the best, I can't believe what to call it, but we had a meeting, we found that we could call a meeting, and Murray had to attend.
Mhm.
And he had to bring his books and all. So he figured he'd go. He came this night, but he wasn't going to give any, and he had two other lieutenants with him. But according to all the things we studied about what we did, our bylaws, it said that we could do a lot of things from the floor, and we did. We were able to tell Murray to get out of the way for a minute. We want a guy up there to talk about something. When he got up there, he suddenly said, well, let's vote to do this, and that. The entire
Yeah, we had a
membership was there.
pre-program. We all knew
Yeah.
what our motions were going to be.
And within 5 minutes, Murray found himself outside. He almost died on the stage.
Well, it gets to show how far we've come.
Oh, yeah.
And now I think one of our biggest missions now is to try to reach all these dealers, probably the 90% of dealers who are not involved in our association.
They should
I
come
see them every day. We're in Boston. I go to the
Yeah.
supply house and I say, hey, did you know about the new law, carbon monoxide law? What?
Yeah.
Or something. And I think, the hardest sell right now is to find the 1 and 2 person companies. Let's face it, most of the companies are 1 person companies that used to work for
Right.
somebody else. And how do you get them involved in the association? How do you make it so that they don't feel like the outsider coming into a room? I remember one time going to a meeting for another type of association. It was a contractors association that was for like home improvement, to see what they were all about. And I walked into the room, and right away I felt like I was the outsider.
Yeah.
I walked in the door, and everybody stopped talking and looked at the door. And I was like, uh-oh, this is not going to be fun. So I think our biggest challenge now is how do we penetrate all those dealers that are 1 person companies that have that feeling they don't want to walk into that room and be that person. How do we get them involved in the association so we get stronger in numbers? We get up to the 400 or 500 numbers. We get most people involved. Is it keeping price low? Is it maybe changing the dinner meeting to something less so they don't feel the cost of having to do that? I know the night meetings work better than the day because we
Oh, yeah.
tried lunch meetings, we've tried morning, and it
night.
seems like people have to make a living, so they have to be out there in the daytime. So
That's
the only
right.
time to have a meeting is at night. It has to be on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday because people go away on the weekends.
Right.
But we need to find that solution.
You got to get them in. That's what made us made us work. When we got our group together, we had enough fire going that you could see it a mile away, that something has to be going on. Look at those guys. And we would talk to all these guys, especially 1- and 2-man companies, who said they couldn't afford anything. So you cannot afford not to be in the association. And then, you know, and then come to the meeting and listen to what we had to say. And little by little, they come in the door. And we did get a lot of 1 and 2 people companies to come in. That's what's going to make it all.
I still get people come up to me that I've met 20 years ago that say, Greg, you know, coming to that meeting where you did the talk on maybe computers, or you did this talk about alarm software, or
Right.
about this particular product, or that they say, you know, you opened my eyes to why I had to be a member of that
Right.
association. They came as an invited guest, something, and I think we've done a really good job with that.
Well, we would invite people to come in and explain products and stuff.
Mhm.
And that was another take too. A lot of these people come in and would talk about insurance, all kinds of things that the little guy needed to know about.
I can remember a meeting many, many years ago where Ken Kirschenbaum, a New York attorney who has an article in one of the larger magazines, trade magazines, came and did a talk for our association, and we had 200 people in the room because he was talking about liability insurance.
Sure.
It was packed, and he was selling contracts for $300 a bundle, and he couldn't get those bundles out fast because people didn't know about insurance.
Oh, yeah.
And it was when all the talk about errors and emission insurance was coming up, and it was very refreshing. And we still, sometimes we hit those key meetings. I can remember when the talk came about carbon monoxide detectors last year, and we packed that room down in Dedham at the meeting, and we've had meetings in the past. I remember former President Kurt Anderson, where he started the seminar series before the meeting. So before our dinner meeting, we'd have a 2-hour seminar to draw the people in, and then they'd stay for dinner, and that really increased our attendance.
Well, see, but everyone's got to work at it, though. All the members have to tell someone else that isn't a
Absolutely.
member. Just come. You don't have to be a member. Come anyway. Listen and look at what we got. And if you like it, join. But it's really your benefit. And then show them all the benefits when they do come and
Absolutely.
what they're going to get.
Get them in the door.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly
hardest part.
that.
Get them in the door. And
It
then show them
cannot
the
be, I don't have time, or I don't have the money. And if the guy's working for himself, he should know what's going on.
Like you said earlier, Peter, you can't afford not to be involved.
Right.
And one of the benefits of membership was the mailing of the newsletter.
Right. This came all every month.
Newsletter to all of our
Directly,
members.
everyone, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it contained advertising from the various manufacturers and articles.
Interesting articles.
Meet a member, I had written
yeah.
an article on Peter one time.
Oh,
put
yeah,
him in
you
there.
wrote about everyone eventually.
Yep.
But you know, we did get the suppliers involved.
Yes,
They gave us, in addition to ads like this, they actually donated money to various things that we needed to do. I must say, I was, you know, that was good. They all did, one behind it. Not one of them refused us, really. The big companies used to come to our meetings, like ADT and Honeywell and all that. They never did a hell of a lot, but they used to come to the meetings, and they would support certain things that we were doing with money. We used to ask them for money and stuff. But they never brought anyone else. Only the key guys would come once in a while.
I can think of something that came out of the association that was really good also, too. Dick Sampson, we all know, a former
Yeah.
president also, runs American Alarm, and now his children are involved. And he used to write these articles and these newsletters, because came from a financial background, MIT graduated,
Oh, yeah.
he had a strong business background. And I remember this article, you happen to pick this article from a 1981 newsletter of Contact, The Overhead Meter That Never Stops. And he broke down what it really cost to install an alarm system and what your true costs are and how you can't do a $99 system. He had a little worksheet in there for overhead costs.
Right.
And boy, I remember I wrote my figures and I go, oh my God, I'm losing money in every job, you know? But you know, the bottom line didn't look like that, but when you broke it down the way he did it, because he was very smart that way, and still is, it was a great article, and I really appreciated that, you know, seeing that information in there in our local little newsletter, and I learned so much from that.
You know, at that period of time when people were giving away their allowance and the discharge and the monitoring, was a bad time for our industry. It cheapened it. And people expected to get everything for nothing then. And it was, you know, and then the little guys like us would, if you did it, I never did it, but if you did it, you would realize you were losing money. You weren't doing yourself any good, and not only that, you were a cheap alarm company. A
Right.
big mistake. that
one of the
people allowed it.
other benefit of membership in the association was the ability to address legislation by a larger body
That's right.
of people, and it was successful. And one of the The things we're objecting to is the telephone company, Bell Telephone. I've forgotten what we were selling, what were we yelling about?
It was about the telephone jacks, right?
Yeah, the telephone
Was it the
jacks.
telephone jack? Anyway, we had a Boston Tea Party where we picketed at Heinz Memorial Auditorium.
And then the
And
caravan.
all the trucks from
33 vehicles, I remember.
And we
That was
carried
quite a
the pickets out in front.
Quite a bit.
And there was a story here that, I wrote that.
Yeah.
A picture here of alarm company executives, owners, and installers in unfamiliar territory, the picket line.
Yes, here, the Boston Tea Party brought an immediate positive result. At the conclusion of the picketing, 2 telco representatives were dispatched to the pre-planned NEAC, which was our New England Association sponsored reception at the Pier Restaurant, and so we got a dialogue started right away. It was beautiful. And this actually was repeated a few years ago also, when we had a strong opposition. The union electricians wanted to kind of break apart part of the telecommunications industry, wanted to take part of our business away,
Yeah.
and they were trying to send this legislation through. And we were at the State House every day near the end of the session. I remember one day we all had our trucks again, and we circled the State House, and we drove around beep 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 as the representatives were arriving. They're like, "What's all that noise?" And we really raised a few eyebrows that day. Wow, there's a lot of guys in this industry.
But you know, it's going to be a forever thing in our industry to
Absolutely.
to
You're right,
keep
Peter.
watching them, because I got to say it, I was an electrician once too, a long time ago. They want to get us anytime, anywhere. If you're not looking, they're going to stick their hand on
Yeah,
something.
I'm not singling out any group, but there will always be issues. There will always be somebody that will try to put something they think is meaningful and important. But that's why we pay a lobbyist. That's why we're involved. And we have members that are up at the State House all the time. That's why we all have to personally get involved and meet our state reps and our senators, so we can talk to them and call them and understand what they need to hear from us to stop a bad bill from going through.
And you got to keep in touch with each other.
Absolutely.
All the alarm companies, no matter where they are, I don't care if you're in the hills or the Berkshires, you got to be in touch with someone to see what's going on all the time.
Absolutely.
I remember a lot of things, but way back.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, Alzheimer's hasn't set in
A lot of
yet.
things, but, well, we used to have some tough meetings with them, with the union one over.
Oh, yes, I remember some of those meetings.
Oh.
I remember walking out on one of
Oh,
those
yeah, we
meetings.
did.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we also have meetings now that you brought up another thing. We have members of our association that go to the electrical board. They're sitting there. We have another member, I think Dave Duvall, who's been religiously going to all these, FPFP meetings, to all the, to see what's changed in the fire industry, and he's there to report back to us to make sure something doesn't get added that
Well,
harms us.
Ralph was doing it for a number of years.
Ralph was
He
involved
our
with the
inside
state
guy,
electrical
yeah.
board, and James Baker.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a lot of members. I mean, that takes a lot of personal time. They work all day, then they would go to a meeting that would last
Right.
several hours a night. That's a lot of work.
It is. You got to want to do it. You got to, well, again, you got to know, you got to love what you're doing first.
You have to have people step
We're
up.
alarmists, as they used to call them. You got to love that, and everything else will fall in.
Absolutely.
You're willing to do anything then.
You have to be able to get involved, and if you feel comfortable talking to the state reps, there's other ways to get involved, but you have to join, and it's not that expensive. When you look at the whole cost of it during the whole year, what is it? It's just a few cents, a week.
But what it'll do for you?
Absolutely.
One of the other things that evolved from our association and the association in Rhode Island was the NEAC, the New England Alarm Associations
Yeah.
Council, and the NEAC show, and I think their name changed over the years. What's the current name? New England,
Same acronym, but
same
different name.
acronym,
Yeah.
yeah.
Paul got involved with that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and holding the annual shows.
Yes, in fact,
the
I've heard
conventions.
tradespeople say that that's one of the best shows in the country,
Oh, yeah.
because it's a
Oh,
local
it's the
regional
ones we
show. We draw a lot of people. People want to be at that show. We sell it out every year
Oh, yeah.
for vendors. It's a great show, and we seem to have a very good location now just west of the city
Oh,
that can handle us. So,
And my son took me to the last one.
So our advice for anybody in this business is to join your local alarm association, because it'll pay dividends both through what you receive and what you can donate.
Right.